Hello Summoner, and welcome to another ProGuides video. I'm Tia, and today we're going to talk about the 10 best solo carries on patch 11.12. These are the champs that are overtuned enough to hard carry games and are considered safe to blind pick, with little to no bad matchups that can completely shut you down. Do note that the champs in this video are generally the most meta picks for their role, and as a result, most of them are picked or banned pretty frequently. If you're looking for champs to play that are much less contested, check out our top 3 champs to main series. The champs in those vids are still strong enough to carry with, but they're low in both pick and ban rate, meaning you're much more likely to get your hands on them. Starting things off in the top lane, we have Riven. Top lane carries in general are the types of champs where, when played mediocrely, are completely useless compared to tanks and juggernauts. Those classes are just easier to execute and can always serve as beefy frontliners even when behind. But with the higher skill cap, carry-type bruisers also have much more carry potential when played to perfection, and no champ fits that description better than Riven. In fact, if you're good enough at Riven, many of the matchups that are considered hard counters in lower skilled elos, like Garen and Renekton, actually become skill matchups. With clean comboing and fast reflexes, you can outplay their aggression and even turn on them to be the one getting a kill. Another thing that makes Riven OP is that while most bruisers specialize in either splitting or team fighting, you can swap between the two as you need with her. Once Riven has a few items, her basically non-existent cooldowns make her practically unduelable for any other side laner. But those low cooldowns aren't just OP for 1v1s. They also give her the mobility to be able to dive on and stick to any target she wants. This flexibility allows you to change things up based on either the state of the game or how good each comp is at certain strategies. For example, you may have a hard-winning 1v1 lane, but if the enemy comp has Nocturne jungle and Twisted Fate mid, you probably want to just group up and force 5v5s. But if the enemy comp is a death ball with a support like Lulu or Janna that shuts you down, stick to playing the side lanes. Going into practice tool with Riven is a great way to work on your combos, since it literally takes hours and hours to master them all, but that won't be enough to make you a great solo queue player on her. With all of her hopping, skipping, and jumping around, you have to play every matchup just a bit different, so at the end of the day, you're just going to have to play a lot of games to understand how to play each matchup. That can seem like a lot of work, but I may have a little bit of a shortcut for you. With a ProGuides subscription, you can get access to all of our online courses to help you understand the ins and outs of laning. If you have more specific questions about certain matchups, subbing means you get unlimited chats with all of our top-level coaches, and if you book a session, you'll even get a discounted rate. All of these resources will help you save a ton of time on learning both the basic essentials and the more advanced techniques. So head on over if you're actually trying to spend more time climbing with a little help from us, and less time trying to figure out what you're doing wrong alone. We're even running a pretty big sale, so now is a great time. Just use discount code RANKUP2021 for 20% off of your sub. Another seemingly unbeatable top laner that's safe to blind pick into pretty much any matchup is Camille. While her overall win rate in all elos is just sort of above average, we see the same type of mastery curve we described before. In high elos, she's just as OP now as she was in earlier stages of the seasons. This has been amplified even more with Divine Sunderer being buffed, making tank and juggernaut matchups that were at least somewhat difficult before much easier. You still won't be able to just run at and kill Volibear or Darius, but with some good laning, you'll easily be able to reach your mythic and start slicing them up. Where Riven has tons of mobility for dodging in and out of fights to trade, Camille has one tool that's even more OP for trading in lane, her W. In lanes where it's not safe to walk into melee range of your opponent, like when you're dealing with a Poppy or Wukong, you can sit back and spam W. The empowered hits not only deal more damage, but also give you sustain, so you just end up whittling them down while you remain at or near full HP yourself. That is, of course, the worst case scenario for laning. Most of the time, you can be a bit more aggressive using your Qs, specifically the second one that deals true damage, to go for hard-hitting trades on your opponents. But like Riven, you'll just have to put work into learning each trade. Taking a look at some junglers, our returning king of the role is Fiddlesticks. This champ is so broken that he literally transcends the meta. Riot has done everything they can to make jungle all about early game aggression. As a result, the most OP meta picks have been the super aggro champs like Lee Sin, Elise, and Shaco, who can turbo gank non-stop, and then use catch-up experience to not be too behind an enemy jungler that may be power farming away. But Fiddle's ult is just so insanely strong once you have it that it's worth his low pressure early game. Early game, the ganks have basically no counterplay. The far-reaching blink allows you to gank over literally any wall, and with the combination of his fear and silence, you basically have a 100% chance of killing your target as long as you're pathing to the right lanes. And once you get out of the early stages, things really turn on for you. With just a couple of items, Fiddle has the damage to pretty much solo wipe the entire enemy team with a well-timed ult. The one obvious thing is that you need to use it from the Fog of War to get the full fear effect on the enemy team. But with the super low cooldown on his passive, it's pretty easy to both clear out enemy vision and establish your own. Just one more thing that makes Fiddle an OP self-sufficient pick that doesn't even need to rely on teammates to set up for a fight. One more thing that makes him broken is how safe his early game is. Usually the biggest weakness of farming junglers is being invaded, but Fiddle isn't actually that weak early. His ganks are only bad because he doesn't really have a way to reach opponents without his ult. But when the enemies are the ones coming to you, his drain alone allows you to win most fights, especially when they make the mistake of fighting you near a jungle camp. There are a couple of champs you may find hard to duel, namely those like Xin that have CC to stop your drain and the damage to kill you after. But in those cases, it's not really too much of an issue. Just fear your opponent and run away. Our other OP jungler is Shaco. One of the most important factors when determining if a champ is an OP blind pick is worrying about how easily a hard counter may shut you down. While Shaco may have some tough 1v1 opponents in the jungle like Lee Sin or Rek'Sai, the thing is, you don't have to worry about ever fighting your counterpart. Instead, you just take advantage of his boxes to get a really fast first clear and immediately look to gank whichever lane seems easiest to hit. With Shaco's Q allowing you to blink over walls, this means pretty much any opponent that's leaving their tower is a potential target, especially when an ally has CC to set you up. If you get early flashes instead of kills, don't be one of those junglers that just never comes back to the lane. You want to spam repeat ganks with Shaco to force your way into a snowballing lead as hard as you can. The thing that sets Shaco apart from the other early game junglers is that he honestly never really falls off. You build a mix of lethality and crit so you can kill most squishy champs before they can even react, and he has the ability to actually get the damage off, even when grouped up, thanks to him having a stealth. So while the other early game champs struggle to maintain their lead even when ridiculously fed as the game reaches the 5v5 stages, Shaco can poof into the enemy team, take out a high priority carry, and still safely get out with Duskblade stealth. On the topic of farming versus high gank, which jungle meta do you prefer to play in? Personally, I can definitely see the pros and cons to both. On one hand, early game ganks and skirmishes means more action, which can be more excited to watch and play. But on the other hand, it can be frustrating for laners that have to deal with the constant ganks, especially when they end up with a jungler that doesn't show nearly as much pressure. And that actually brings us to today's question of the day. Which jungle meta do you think is better for the game? Whether it's one or the other, or a mix of the two, or something completely different, let us know down in the comments below. We usually like a bit more of an open-ended question of the day, but jungle balance is definitely a pretty hot topic, so we want to know what you have to say. But now, without further ado, let's get back to the video. Now, taking a look at the mid lane, we'll start things off with Rumble. When Riot decided to nerf Rumble last patch, they kinda forgot that he wasn't just a strong jungler. The champ itself is just kinda insane, being that he is OP, he's blindable pick in both solo lanes, and even bot lane when paired with the Senna support. His strength comes from the ridiculous lane presence he has, thanks to the combination of high damage trades and insane wave clear, giving him pretty much permanent prio in all matchups. If your opponent makes the mistake of contesting you in lane, you're usually going to dish out a pretty big chunk of damage to them. Rumble has so much base damage that even just picking up Sork shoes usually gives you the ability to 100-0 opponents when you land your E's and have Ignite Up. While mages aren't too common in the current meta, when you do run into the occasional range matchup where you can't really just run at and fight your opponent, you'll use your W to mitigate their poke and shove in the wave. After that, look to roam and help your jungler or gank a side lane. Bot lane roams with ult up are particularly effective and usually result in guaranteed kills on flashless opponents that are even a bit overextended. While most lane bullies fall off pretty hard, Rumble does anything but that. His ult gives him insane team fighting strength, and with a well-placed one, you can even potentially melt the entire enemy team if they take a bad fight in a choke point. As a note for his items, you may want to consider swapping your Mythic to Riftmaker when dealing with tankier enemy team comps. In that case, go Demonic Embrace right after your Mythic instead of picking it up later in the game. Our other OP mid is Katarina. While she may not have the insane lane strength and ease of execution that makes Rumble such an oppressive bully, Kat is just a champ that can always find a way into the game. With good mechanics, you can usually pick up kills on opponents, especially those that don't know how to play around Kat's daggers, but in tougher matchups, you don't have to do well early to succeed. Since most assassins are single-target, bursty champs, they usually need to be fed early to have an impact. But since Kat actually does good AoE damage and has the potential to pick up resets for good extended damage, you don't have to pop off with solo kills to carry. Aside from just 1v1ing your laner, Katarina is also good at roaming to bot to pick up free kills. A lot of this comes from opponents that respect her damage too much. Being afraid to walk up and be near her daggers usually means they aren't even contesting the wave, giving you tons of roam timers where you can look to pick up some kills. Once you have your ult, you definitely want to look to do that as much as you can, especially when you have teammates that can make bot dives easy, such as a support like Leona or Alistar or a jungler like Volibear or Amumu. As far as the build goes, even if you don't need to snowball, it's obviously the preferred result. With that in mind, you want to start Darksteel on Katarina. If the game is going well early, you'll want to upgrade the Darksteel to Medjays right after finishing your Sork shoes and cut Zhonya's from your full build. The lack of Hourglass definitely makes you a bit more vulnerable, but when you have a fully stacked Soul Stealer, you should be wiping the entire enemy team before they can blow you up. Moving things down to the bot lane, we'll start off with Jinx. Even after being nerfed and bug fixed a bit, she's still been the top performing champ in the role. With her competition of Kai'Sa and Varus being hit with some nerfs on this patch, she's reaping the rewards and getting even more reliable as a hyper carry. This video is all about blind pickable hard carries, but Jinx's immobility definitely makes her a bit more susceptible to kill lane supports like Leona and Nautilus. In those cases, wave management is super important to survive the laning phase. If you accidentally start slow pushing the lane to the enemy, you'll be pretty vulnerable to being engaged on in 2v2s, as well as being open to jungle ganks. Be sure to communicate with your support and jungler to fix waves before it's too late. Out of laning phase though, you'll want to try to constantly be grouped up with your team. Jinx has pretty much the hardest carry potential of any champ in 5v5 teamfights, but her lack of mobility makes it hard to escape from threats, at least until you get the movement speed from getting excited to run away. So with that in mind, always be near your support or some other teammate that can peel. As far as the runes go, it's pretty common for a lot of ADC players to run boots and biscuits, but hear me out. Biscuits can definitely provide some nice sustain, but unless you're playing at the very top level, your laning phase isn't decided by having an extra bit of HP. Most of the time, the winners and losers of bot lane are decided by who gets hooked first or who gets more help from the jungler. So for that reason, when playing a champ that's already playing for mid to late game scaling, why not just go for the scaling runes instead? Our other OP bot laner for this patch is Ezreal. While he may not have the insane hyper carry damage in teamfights that Jinx has, he's definitely a lot more self-sufficient. Poking from halfway across the screen with Q and having his E to kite opponents makes him an incredibly elusive target for would-be divers and assassins. And with our build including Frozen Heart, those that do reach you won't really find much success in actually bringing you down. We already talked about this in our OP predictions video, but Frozen Heart is an amazing item on Ezreal. Not only does it make you pretty much untouchable by the OP assassins and divers that are played in top jungle and mid, but he also gets a lot of value out of the other stats for offense as well. Being a caster, he takes advantage of the ability haste for more Q spam to poke down opponents, with the mana also being a direct damage boost to your Mira mana. Before 11.11, Ezreal was already a self-sufficient carry, and his hard-hitting poke made it easy to 1v9 games against squishier enemy team comps. But his one glaring weakness was dealing with tanks and bruisers. Beefier opponents could just shrug off the poke of the meta lethality build. But with Divine Sunderer being buffed, Ezreal is happily abusing what is now the most OP mythic in the game. Between the 12% max HP damage and the pen it gives, along with the pen from Cyrilda's, even the thickest of tanks can't just soak up all the poke you throw out. Jinx and Ezreal obviously make the list for two very distinct reasons. One is the best damage dealer in the game, and one is super safe while dishing out damage from out of reach of pretty much any other champ. For you ADC mains out there, what is your preferred style? Would you rather have the damage to wipe out the entire enemy team on your own, but need your team a little bit more, or would you rather exchange some of the damage for a safer, more self-sufficient style? want to know your answers down in the comments below because I'm curious and also I'm a support main, and so, I want to hear what you ADCs have to say. Following up on the ADCs, we have the other half of bot lane. Our first OP support is Lulu. While this video is technically about hard carries and enchanters are more enablers than playmakers like Thresh and Leona, Lulu is just so insanely OP that we have to include her in the list. Unlike the other enchanters that generally have to play safer early and scale up to be team fighting gods, Lulu is strong right off the bat. Pix's damage on her autos give strong extended trades, with her EQ combo giving a lot of burst if the fights are short and scrappy. You also don't even have to concede against kill lanes with her. Shielding your ADC, or you if you're being targeted, and polymorphing the enemy ADC when they try to follow up on their support's engage is enough to negate most of the damage, and afterwards, you can usually turn the fight in your favor. Something to note for the runes we picked out. We recommend Airy as the standard since it gives you better early game aggression, and the picks in this video are all about maximizing your impact to carry your team any way you can. But in particularly tough lanes, you can swap the runes to the more cautious Guardian Page for added safety. Finishing off our list, we have Thresh. Riot has tried to put out nerfs more than once this season to knock him off the top spot. As we predicted, the nerfs they went with didn't actually do much to affect just how hard he can carry games. Even if you end up being counterpicked in the lane, the ability to roam and make plays elsewhere make him always a good champ. So if you're the playmaking type, feel free to lock him in blind. As we've gone over many times, Thresh does it all, and he's not just a jack of all trades, he's pretty much a master of most of them. He has insane disruption and peel with his Flay and ult, and his W gives a unique way to protect allies that not even enchanters can. That's why he's such an OP pick with immobile hyper carries like Jinx. Yeah, Lulu will give Jinx insane damage output, but Thresh's Lantern gives her a way out of otherwise inescapable deaths, such as being trapped in a Jarvan ult while Flash is down. Thresh's one weakness is that he doesn't really have what you'd consider hard engage, aside from being able to flash, flay, or hook opponents that overstep. But still, his Q does give good pick potential, especially when you have good vision control, so make sure you have plenty of wards down around objectives. Clear out the enemy's own vision and fish for hooks over walls to make picks before a teamfight even happens. And that wraps things up for our 10 best solo carries patch 11.12 edition. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to sub so you never miss out on our meta guides, so you're always in the loop on what the best picks are. Remember to let us know which jungle meta you think is healthiest down in the comments below. And one last thing, don't forget to check out our Discord in the description box below where you can enter our giveaway or just hang out and be part of a community. I can't wait to see you guys back for the next video, but until then, good luck on the Rift, make sure you eat a cookie or two, and make sure you get some sleep, because sleep is for the strong and not the weak. Okay, I'll see you guys later, bye!